Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I'm just going to close my notifications out there. If you want to pop in, you want to say hi, welcome. Join in. I don't know who's going to come in tonight. Maybe nobody, but that is okay because, I get used to keeping company with myself, right? And there will come a time, maybe just one person shows up, and that one person is inspired by something that happened during the course of my day. Maybe it was an experience, a lesson, a conversation. Maybe it's just sitting and listening to me beef off a little bit. If you were in here yesterday, I was experimenting in the past week with a new camera. I didn't like it. We went back to the old way. I am happy with that. And I'm glad it keeps my living room a little bit more clear. I have a very small place and I was having little setups all over the place. So I'm really perfectly happy to come back to my desk. Also, when I was in yesterday, we had the topic of resilience. And because I was so disappointed in my camera setup, right? Not frustrated or anything, just disappointed. It was an experiment that didn't work out for me. And then after my live show, I deleted my podcast, put everything back, set it up the way I originally had it, and I am content. I am very content, and there is no regrets in anything I do. And it's not to say that this setup is going to stay the way it is forever, but in this moment, right, that little experiment that I had just didn't work out for me. So, what I thought I would do tonight is maybe we would go back into that word resilience and see if I could do a little bit better job. You know, resilience, it is in that not giving up in order to make a little bit of movement for ourselves. Sometimes we find that we have to take some hits, right? Sometimes we have to look a little bit foolish, a little bit unintelligent, a little ditzy, and that's the truth. But we have to realize that it is in that resilience, it is in that determination to find a way, to never give up, right? And to just keep going, find another way, right? To realize that in making any kind of movement, in any goal, in achieving any dream, we can't, like I said, right? Think that we can enter into the Olympics and win the gold medal from just wanting it, right? Or just needing it, right? For a lot of people, the things that we love, the things that we dream of, those things that we set goals to achieve, those are the things that we absolutely love. And, if we can love something, right? If we can really care about something the way I care about my my podcast, for my live show, Chatters Live, for my brand itself. And, because I care for it so much, I'm willing to take those hits. I'm willing to look ditzy or foolish or unintelligent, right? And I don't think anybody would be so unkind, right? Because the crew that I have are very kind. They're very considerate and very tolerant in the content that I bring across my brand. And that's the truth. I am a vlogger, but when you go to say, and maybe my audience is not familiar with this, but there are soup kitchens like the Salvation Army. And when you stand in line to get in for a free meal, you sit in the pews and you listen to a little bit of Jesus before you get your meal, right? For myself, I don't like to go straight into the heavy. But I understand through the experiences in my life, through the conversations, the adventures, the mishaps, there are lessons in all of that. And so, in considering myself a vlogger, right, rather than a thought leader, I have thoughts. Everybody has thoughts, and everybody is welcome to bring the thoughts to the table. But I like to do it in a layman's way, I like to do it in friendly conversation. I like to lay it out in a way that it becomes a little bit of a discovery. You never know in the conversation what the insight might be. That insight is for me too. Lots of times I have to come into my own live show and take the lesson for myself. But yesterday, after I ended my live show, and I says, yeah, this camera setup is just not working for me. We're going to put it back the way it is. If something comes across my path, right, that might make it work a little bit better for me, or maybe I won't even know if it'll work better for me. But if I'm willing to take a shot at it, right, if I'm willing to put that effort in it, if I'm willing to, right, take those little hits, right, and get frustrated with myself that I can't get things right, that I start pushing those red buttons, and right, that I can ruin things, ruin my computer, ruin or say something in my own frustration or in my own, right, stumbling over myself to get a message out there that, you know, that I'm willing to do that because I understand that it is through my practicing, it is through my experimentation that, right, eventually I will get it right. I am in it for the long haul. And that's what resilience calls for, right? In not giving up, right? It doesn't just mean, right, you don't like it, you pivot on to something else and consider that not giving up. Yes, sometimes that happens, but when you find something, topics that you love, right? This this idea of making this movement for myself. I was an urban explorer. I thought I was coming in here and I was going to entertain, but in the process of 10 years, and that takes resilience too, because there were a few times, quite a few times in those 10 years that I wanted to give up on myself. Never wanted to give up on the brand, but I wanted to give up on myself. And if I had given up on myself, the brand would have gone down with me. So, right, this just was not gonna happen, right? My brand is everything, but not just because, right, I love being a YouTuber, even though I do love being a YouTuber. It's in the lessons, it's in the experience of being a YouTuber that I found, it's going to sound silly, but found myself, right? I found the meaning of life, if that's possible to even say that, and even though I'm not there, even though probably will never be there in this life, I'm just going to keep going and I'm going to just keep bumbling along just like everybody else, be willing to look foolish, ditzy, unintelligent, right? though, though I don't feel that I am, because, with the time, I've become a little bit better in what I do, in that storytelling, and in recognizing that I'm a vlogger and not trying to be something that I'm not, right? I'm not a Jordan Peterson. I wouldn't even want to go up against Jordan Peterson. He would rip me apart because, right? Maybe that's his intent, right? Maybe what's coming out of my mouth or coming out of my soul or coming out of my mind would rub, right, uncomfortably with him. And he would feel that he would have to set me straight, put me in my place. But I can tell you, in this word resilience, he would have a battle on his hands. I'm just using him as an analogy. I love Jordan Peterson's messaging out there. I really feel that he has contributed a lot to people's movement. But you know what? In being able to bring some of my own ideas to the table that might not, right, rub people well, that it might butt heads with other people's ideas about what movement is all about, what this world is all about, what I'm all about, what all my, because everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion, and everybody is vying for our attention, right? Even I'm vying for attention. But it may or may not happen. It's only going to be in my resilience and my willingness to keep trying and my willingness to take the hits and my willingness, right, to never give up that I'm going to get better, right? I'm going to get better. Now I'm treading water. I don't expect that I'm going to be out there competing with philosophers and scientists and mathematicians and astronomy, astrologists, and right. Even in my passions of archaeology, and I'm deep in the Neolithic right now, and I love discoveries when it comes to fossilized bones and how far can we get back and how much can we discover about our ancestors, right? Understanding, even saying something like that is going to rub some people uncomfortably, might butt heads with other people's ideas, right? I believe that, in this moment, that we have a pretty good possibility of becoming extinct, right? And that is a truth. We are the king of the jungle, if you want to put it that way. But that's not to say that we are the smartest creature, the smartest species in this world. We are in competition, and not really competition, because we don't look at these other species as competition, but they are just as smart or smarter if something happened to humans, right? Those other parts of me, I do believe, would have a few choices in that movement forward, right? Humans, what a amazing species in creating the best human being we possibly can. Those other parts of us have invested so much and taken so many hits, right? But if they're not giving up on us, why are we giving up on us? Why are we doing that when we have so much backup going on? I have no intentions of backing down, right? My content may change. I may pivot again. I don't know. I'm in a constant state of change and a constant state of bettering myself, and I enjoy it so much. And despite what anybody thinks, despite, I don't want to rub people wrong, but we live in a world of all kinds, don't we? Different political ideas, different religious ideas, different cultural ideas, even within our own communities. different traditions and different understandings and different movement. I am out there, right? Looking for people like me, right? I'd like to say it's a good thing that I'm not. It makes me a unique, but I understood that even before I started my brand, I was a unique, right? How many people in their 50s, especially women, are going off into the wilderness, right? Like they're Grizzly Adams and they're just connecting to Mother Nature. It's not the norm to do that. Again, I'm going to say, how many people in their 50s and 60s are vloggers and YouTubers? Lot more now, understanding it's never too late, that people are actually, right, dipping their toes into, right, creation and being able to find an outlet where they can be accountable and they can show up and they can be resilient, right? And they can have something that's all theirs, right? Prairie Dodgers, it's all mine, right? And again, if you've never met me before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I have to say that I had no idea in truly when I first made my mission statement what that truly meant. It is in only the lessons, right? It is only in butting heads with myself, even because I had my own understandings. I grew up with a lot of understandings, not understanding that they weren't my understandings, but they were somebody else's understandings that I was wearing as truths. And in this process of spending a little time in building my brand and making the necessary choices in staying motivated and staying inspired by what I do, right? Because it is hard work. It's right. There are lots of times that I'd say, oh, I'd love to go off for a few days. But you know what? In my dedication of making sure that I'm showing up every day, I can't very well go off into the wilderness where there is no towers and I can't have any, right, live shows going on. I can film and come back, but I love the live shows. I love sharing my experiences and my lessons, and I take lessons from everywheres, in my relationships, in my conversations, in my wilderness, in my urban exploration, in the lessons that I take online, and the few workshops, seminars that I've been privileged enough to attend, right? In learning to be able to work with networks where they're strangers, that they were picked and included by somebody else, and it's not a group created by myself. Even here, this is my group, right? This is where I show up and I share myself in a way so that I can be the evidence for others that they can make some changes in their lives. And if you've been hanging out with me, and I do, I am grateful that I have had people that have been hanging out with me here on YouTube for 10 years. Yes, I've been on YouTube for 10 years now. Over 10 years. I could say for over 10 years. And in that time, I have picked up people who have so graciously joined me and given me their time, right? In vying for that attention, because I was in the beginning, I was vying for that attention, right? I thought I was going to be a YouTube superstar. That isn't the priority now. That isn't, because this is a part of my life now. I've committed myself to my channel. And I'm so grateful because, there's no breathing down my neck because this is my brand. And if I wanted to show up once a week, once a month, right, I would make that decision. But because I've built up that resilience, because I've allowed myself to be a little bit elasticy, right, that I can stretch myself, and I'm and a few lessons under my belt, and I know I can stretch a little bit further in what's uncomfortable, right? Even in the experimentation of setting up a new camera, a new angle in my lives, that that I'm willing to experiment like that. And it didn't work out for me, right? But it's in my resilience to try something new. And yes, I came back to the old way because if it's not broke, why am I fixing it? Unless it's going to expand to be better, and it will be. There will be better cameras, better setups, right? Better opportunities, better conversation, better coverage on the words that I pick to bring to the table. And they're just powerful words, right? I love mindset. Mindset, seriously, guys, saved my butt. I grew up, right, with my mother having us go to Sunday school and church, but I outgrew that. And I became also maybe a little bit disillusioned in that, also, because, well, that's for another story, the because and that. And it's not something I've not discussed before. But in this conversation of resilience, right? That I built that up through listening to others, by leaving myself open to the idea that my beliefs were probably not my beliefs, that they were probably beliefs of somebody else. And I had to feel my way along for myself. I had to do that for myself. And it was hard. It was scary, right? It was super scary because I was coming up to ideas about things in my life that, right, I don't know. I didn't think there were any issues besides the fact that, well, there were lots of things now that I look at it, right? But I'm sure at that time I didn't think I had any problems, right? That I thought that I was gonna, like I said, be a YouTube superstar, that everything was gonna be amazing and it was just gonna go click, 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 click with everything I tried and everything I did. And instead it went bang, 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 bang. And that's the truth. Uh, it didn't matter because once I saw the evidence for myself, not just the evidence and the changes that I was going through and how my life was improving. And again, if you have never met me before, I came that close to becoming homeless over COVID. And, it was only in my determination to not give up. And I had no idea how it was going to work out for me, right? Because my whole life was falling apart. My resources were dwindling away. My relationships were falling apart. And yet, there was something inside of me that believed, right, that it couldn't last forever. Maybe it was in my upbringing, in taking all those hits, right? Understanding that everything was going to be okay, right? As long as things could be bad, is as long as things could be good too. And nothing in either or stays the same because, right, we are human and we have these emotions and we have relationships with others and we have feelings for others. And sometimes we will stop what we're doing in a second for the people that we care about. And then stopping for 1 minute, I just wanted to say for those of you, because there are people that have been, you know, watching out for me and have involved themselves in that, like that I share here online. And for those of you who don't know, my sister has congenital heart failure, and she's been on a waiting list now for 2 months to get her surgery date. She's going in for quadruple heart bypass. She got the date. She's going in next Friday. These are the circumstances. These are the wrenches that I will adapt and conquer. And if I can't show up in those days, I won't show up. And why? Because that's my family, right? And again, sometimes we don't rub each other well. Sometimes we butt heads, but we are family. And she would never, ever let me down in that situation. And I'm not about to do that for her either. She's going to need me for the next few weeks. So I don't know how those next few weeks are going to play out, right? Everything is going to work out the way it's going to work out. And I'm going to take care of her. We're all going to take care of her. Our family is tight. There's four of us sisters, and we are close. We all live our own lives. We are all unique in what we do, and we are all resilient. We never give up. We're always determined, and we're always tripping out. We're always struggling with something. But in working with what we're struggling with and searching out those solutions and adapting and conquering, and sometimes it's just in that acceptance, like I said, that everything is going to be okay. Just accept that everything is going to be okay, right? Because you don't know. And we're not fortune tellers, right? In that way. So we can't put our insights to anything when those insights are in somebody else's hands. But I do understand, right? No matter what goes on in my life, everything is going to be okay, right? If my life ended tomorrow, everything is going to be okay, right? And nobody needs to shed a tear for me because I'm going to be back, right? Even before you have a chance to recognize that I'm gone. And I believe that as a truth for me. But if you had asked me 10 years ago, right? And you said that to me, or if I said that, I would just like, where did that come? That's just like the silliest thing ever. But to each one of us, right, we get to decide what's a truth and what's not a truth. And lots of people, they just sit in the truth of others. Sometimes they just do sit in that acceptance that this is how life is. And some people do that fortune telling, and they stop themselves from doing the right thing or being even optimistic that things are going to be okay, right? I always say everything is going to be okay because everything is going to be okay. The bad can't last forever just as much as the good can't last forever. I have my own wrenches in my life, right? But it is in that support to each other, right? In being that friend, being that shoulder to cry on, and being that ear for somebody else, that we can make that movement. And if we can do that, if we can all do that to some extent, right? If there are more people stepping forward and being accountable, right? Even though, right, it might make it so they look silly, unintelligent, spinny, right? If they're willing to do that, then maybe somebody else might see that and be inspired, right, by those fumbles that we make, right? Those wrenches that we come into our lives. or maybe they have insight that they're watching us live our lives and express our lives and going, oh my goodness, she has no idea what she's talking about. That's okay too, because that's you, right? And I only have control over my own actions, my own thoughts, my own feelings. And that's the truth. And I would never think to, and I would hope that I wouldn't overstep my bounds and say, you need to do this, right? My sister says sometimes I can be a little bit preachy, but each one of us get to decide what we want to take in, right? What we want to believe as a truth. And if we take it upon ourselves that maybe possibly that we can maybe at least try it out to see if it works out, that we're willing to take those hits. And if it doesn't work out, but you think maybe it might work out, give it another shot until you finally realize, yeah, this just isn't working out for me. Just like my camera setup in the past few days. And then just pivot a little bit, right? It's better that I make that little angular move rather than getting a 180 or a 360 in my life, right? Like my computer blows up or I knock it on the floor because it's sitting in the wrong spot or I lose all my followers because right so you just camera is just set up is just not working. And because I'm not comfortable and because I expect, my audience is highly sensitive or empathic, that they're going to know right away. And what kind of evidence is that for anybody else that I come in here not genuine, that I come in here all frustrated and complaining when, right? All it takes is a quick decision and a few minutes of my time, and we're right back to where it worked, right? Right? It wasn't broken. I just try to improve on it. That improvement didn't work out for me, so we go back to the drawing board on that. We'll figure out a better system. But in that process, I did learn, right? I learned a little bit more in my settings, in my computers, and in my cameras, right? I got a little bit more out of my comfort, right? Because sometimes I get a little bit too comfortable in the conversations and in what I'm trying to bring across the table in my storytelling and my little bit of listening a little bit about you. And right, like I said, I'm not a religious person in any way, but I am so grateful for mindset that, you know, it lets me understand that, I can make some movement for myself, right? That the lessons in mindset are the same lessons in, say, 80% of the religious ideas out there, right? That we all have those baselines that we can, right? Values, if we can work in values, that maybe religion doesn't have to spend or take up so much space in my life, that it would take out that hairy scary, that agitation, that oh my goodness, I'm making this kind of movement, but what is the religious aspect of that? Coming to understand that maybe I'm a little bit closer than I thought to the reality of what my father was. My father was spiritual. My mother loved Jesus. My father was spiritual. And it took me a long time to accept either or, not recognizing that it was okay to be whoever I am, right? And if I could discover and not give up, and if I can trust myself that I can make good decisions, even if somebody out there says that, oh my goodness, she has no idea what she's talking about, that's okay, right? There's got to be something that is a lesson in me showing up that made it so that, right, you hung out with me for a little bit too. Maybe it was just in that bravery or courage to look a little bit foolish in what I'm doing, right? It's only in the practice, it's only in showing up that we get better. It's only in the failing that we learn our lessons, right? And that's all I can hope for in this little bit of adventure that I'm on in my own life and in sharing it here in my brand, right? That I might be the evidence for somebody else to maybe make a move themselves. Maybe you want to start a YouTube channel. Maybe you want to be a thought leader, right? Anything there is in this world, you can set your mind to and accomplish if you want to. And when I said that, I said, but, I'm not going to do the Olympics. But then I thought, is there some categories out there that possibly, right, that I could manage if I really, really wanted, if I was determined? I mean, Lewis Howes, right? He's going for the Olympics. His team just won. I'm not a sports person, right? But I find it admirable when people push themselves out of their, I'm going to say it because I'm taking this from somebody else, comfort zone, right? That they're pushing themselves further than what they think are what they're comfortable in. And that builds resilience. Me showing up, me taking the lessons, me having the conversations, me opening myself up and be accepting of the situation I'm in the moment, but being determined, right, that it's not going to last forever, right? Or being less determined, right, that it's not going to last forever. Considering if I'm in a good spot in my life or a crappy spot. Sometimes it's in the most of the time it's in the balance of the both, right? That you're dancing with both wonderful things and bad things going on in our life. I'm doing that right now. Like I said, my sister's going into the hospital next Friday. That's a big wrench. That's a big scary wrench, not just for me, but for her. And if she can make those decisions, and they're scary decisions too. She could have made different decisions, but she is a never give up kind of girl, right? She is a never give up. And I'd like to think, right? Maybe I was a little bit of an example in that for her, right? Or maybe she was a little bit of that example for me. But that resilience, right? When it's hard, when you're tired, when things aren't working out for you, and you keep going and you keep trying, right? Things are bound to open up, things are bound to work out. You have to be able to learn a little bit something from every single failure, every single hiccup, every single wrench that's thrown into that engine. There's a lesson in that. And if you're willing to take those lessons, that's movement. That's movement. And we've learned something and experienced something different than what we've always known. And that's pretty amazing. And I think, I think these lessons are going to become more relevant and more important as we move forward because it's so readily accessible to everybody out there. The answers are out there. We're this close to each other, and maybe we're still going to butt head in those religious ideas or those political ideas, those social ideas, those cultural ideas that, that's going to take a while. But you know what? Just go back 50 years and you can see how far we've come. And that only came from the resilience of those who were willing to take that first step. And if they stumbled, they get up and they would just take another step and not give up. And that's how we make the world a little bit better. That's how I'm creating the best human being that I possibly can be, right? Understanding I'm not even close to getting there, right? Probably not even going to happen in my own lifetime, but it'll happen, right? It'll happen. Okay, you guys, resilience. There's a lot of things that we have to learn to be resilient from because there are lots of things. I just put five words here, five powerful words, and they were powerful words, but they're not really words that are in the lessons or in my 54 powerful words because sometimes they have negative con- connotations, right? Meanings to them, right? Like this word despite. This is a word I grew up with, right? Despite what you say, I'm going to do this, right? Despite that you say I can't, I will, right? Despite if you don't like me, I'm going to like myself and I'm going to like you too, right? Despite was a big word for me. It's how I got things done, right? Very grateful for better words in this moment in my life. But again, it took some it took some time and it took unlearning a lot of the things in my life that I had grown up to understand were truths when really they were somebody else's truths, or maybe they were untruths being fed to me, right? That made it so that maybe I never would get the right lessons. And that's a possibility too. That's why I say to each one of us, we get to make those decisions and who we want to hang out with, right? We live in a world now that we don't even have to take our parents' religions as our religions unless it's something that we truly believe in, right? I was let down a little bit by God, I felt when I was a child, right? So I didn't swing my mother's way. But my father, besides being the example in mindset, never shared anything except the quotes. He loved quotes. We lived by quotes. We followed those quotes like they were the Bible. And I loved my dad. And in that relation to that emotion that I had attached to him, right, I come to understand I was a little bit more like him than I was my mother. Right? My mother had lots to offer too, right? But I got to pick and choose the best of each side. And that was a tough go. That was a really tough go. And it is a tough go, right? I suspect that once I'm comfortable with something, that's just the signal to take a little bit more on, a little bit more difficult, because I got down that path. That's packed now, right? Time for a new lesson. And we munch that up, right? And maybe I'll butt heads with it. Maybe I won't. You guys, have a great night. And we'll see you on Monday. If you want to pop in on Sunday night and hang out with us, Chatters Lives. My crew chats more than I do. Hello, Eugene. Thank you for popping in tonight. That's nice of you. I really appreciate that you came in. You always come in. I really appreciate that. I did resilience again today. You can see I got my old setup here. Uh, I'm feeling comfortable. I'm happy to be back at my desk, and that's a truth. And it's not like I won't try that new setup again, but it'll be a different setup next time, right? It's in that experimentation. It's in that willing to fail, willing to look silly. You never know what lessons will come across our path that'll just make it so that Oh my goodness. Really? That's what I've been doing wrong all this time? Oh my goodness. That's so true. Why didn't I think of that before? And you know what? You're on to something else, right? Something bigger and better. And that's the truth. Okay, you guys. That's my good cheer. And we'll see you.